A Jason Rantz exclusive.
A state committeeman from the Pierce County Republican Party had to call police or have someone on his behalf call police after he says he was threatened by Semi Bird. Now, this allegedly occurred over the weekend. It was Friday night at a Washington State Republican Party meeting in Wenatchee at the convention center. And it was at that point that he allegedly warned this individual that he would bury him. Now, this is the line from the statement. I got a hold of the statement that the committeeman gave to the police. It was handwritten. I do have to say there were some spelling errors, like the vulgarity. He had it as 2 words instead of 1. Starts with an M, the mother, that one. I feel like you should know that that's 1 word. However, that's me nitpicking. That's just who I am. He said he, Semi, started out calling me a fat mother bleep, said several other things that I can't remember. Then, as his wife walked out of the restroom, he stated, I better be effing glad his wife was with him or he would bury me. Now, I've got the full statement up at KTTH.com for those of you who want to go on to read it all. But this official told several people what had happened at this meeting. Several people. And I've spoken to a number of people who've all pretty much said exactly the same thing. Now, according to the statement that was made, the victim in this case alleged that there was some kind of meeting where they started to debate whether or not you should allow from the party level the ability to spend funds on any ad or mailer that might attack another Republican. And I'm told that Semi Bird during that debate spoke up and said something that gave off the impression that the person who brought forward this motion was a hypocrite because he attacked Semi Bird. That's what I was told. Obviously, there's no recording and I wasn't there. And so afterward, the guy from Pierce County Republican Party said to Semi, apparently politely, just walked up to him afterward and said, hey, just FYI, no, that I definitely did not do that. I didn't say anything bad about you, Semi Bird, publicly. I've never done it in social media accounts. And that was that. Except he says at that point, you started to get the behavior, the alleged threat from Semi Bird. Now, initially, we reached out to Semi, and he had not responded. But he did post on his X account, quote, my lovely bride and I were attending the WSRP reception while all of the made-up excitement was happening. So it sounds like he's saying he didn't even meet this guy or see this guy. And I imagine that at least that part's easy to prove whether or not that is true or not. I don't know who's telling the truth. I tend to side with, in this case, the victim. But he then went on to say that people were suffering from bird derangement syndrome. And then, in what I'm assuming is a reference to the police having to be called, he said, what's next, a George Floyd incident? Now, yet again, Semi Bird is leaning into the racism and, weirdly in this case, anti-cop rhetoric. Does he think because the Wenatchee PD were called that he's going to get killed by an officer? It's odd. I'm not entirely sure I understand it. Maybe he meant something else.
It's strange that the guy who kind of is supposed to represent like the conservative wing of the party often uses like leftist talking points. All the time around race. The public lynchings he accused me of because I wrote criticisms of him. It's odd, but he has a history of making these kinds of statements specific around him being a victim of racism. Now, there was a 911 call I was able to get my hands on.
Rivercom Dispatch.
Yes, I need to report somebody just made some verbal and pretty bad threats here over at the convention center, and we need to have it documented.
Okay, what's happened?
So a gentleman just approached another gentleman. He was mad at him, and he called him a fat. Said he was going to bury him, and he's lucky his wife's here, so he didn't.
Okay. And did anything physical happen?
Did anything physical happen?
Nothing physical.
Nothing physical, but he threatened physical
If his wife wasn't here.
if his wife wasn't here. And so I think he doesn't want to be in the same room right now. He threatened his life. Yeah.
So Semi then today sent, or at least I saw it today, sent a comment to our sister station, Cairo News Radio. He said, "I had no idea there was any complaint or issue until after it became public on social media. Speaking of my behavior, I can assure you that everyone in attendance of the meeting on the 17th and the executive committee meeting and reception on the 16th will tell you that I conducted myself as I always do, with kindness and professional decorum." Well, I can point to some people who were there who dispute that, right? Obviously his statement is not true. Not everyone there is going to back that. He then goes on to say, "I have full confidence that the Wenatchee Police Department will bring facts in lieu of speculation and innuendo." And then he says, "The prejudice brought against me by the Pierce and Chelan County Republican Party leadership is very public." Now, you might be wondering, well, why did he bring in Chelan? I get why he brought in Pierce County, but why Chelan? Because he presumably saw my story in which I quote the chairman of the Chelan Republican Party. Why did I reach out to that guy? Well, because apparently once he learned about the alleged threat that was leveled against this individual from Pierce County, he said, and he told me over the weekend, I definitely believe it because it's a pattern from Semi.
This was really reminiscent to the conversation I had with Semi Bird last summer when Semi made veiled threats to myself, talking about his military background and his self-defense training, and telling me that if I crossed him again, that he would have consequences for me.
Well, that sounds terrifying. That's his allegation, of course, from Aaron. Now, just to give you some context, there was some drama because apparently someone from the Chelan County Republican group posted on Facebook accidentally using the account for the Chelan County Republicans, in which he offered his criticisms of Semi Bird's chances of winning statewide office, or at least the governorship. And he basically argued the numbers just will never add up. This is not going to be a winnable, campaign. They semi-immediately, well, I shouldn't say semi. Well, that's not my fault that his name is Semi. They took it down rather quickly, and Aaron called Semi, this is what he says at least, to apologize about all of this. And he said, well, things were going well, but then the conversation turned to why the Chelan County Republican County group did not endorse Semi Bird. In fact, they chose not to endorse at all. And that's when Aaron says that Semi sort of switched gears with his personality.
When I made a final apology for the mistake and let him know that I did believe it was an accident and not intentional, nothing malicious, he completely changed. His tone of voice, he got very aggressive in the way he talked, and referred to training and his background, and very, very narcissistic and very aggressive behavior, and told me there would be consequences if it ever happened again.
If whatever happened again, if you...
He wasn't specific. He explained that that what we had done was slandering his name, and that if it happened again, there would be consequences.
How did you take that?
I took that as carefully chosen words by a person who's trained in psyops and tactics for interrogation, trying to convey a threat without making one.
Did you see that as a physical threat, or was that a threat of a lawsuit?
I don't know what he would do, but I believe that he wanted me to believe it was a physical threat. I believe his intention was to scare me.
Now, of course, that's his position, his side. I imagine if Semi acknowledges there was a phone call, he would most likely say, no, that's not what happened at all. But we are getting a trend, a pattern here. right? It's a pretty significant pattern, I think. He was not the only person, Aaron Young, that I spoke to over the weekend who had a similar story about mistreatment, about being talked down to, basically portraying, and in the words of one person I spoke to over the weekend, sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where publicly you have the happy-go-lucky semi-bird, always got a smile on his face, right? The charming semi-bird, but then privately, not so much. Kind of mean and nasty and rude. And, is that fair? Is it uncommon for politicians or talk show hosts to be charming in person or when they're, on the microphone or behind a mic or in front of a camera, whatever it is, and then off air throw things at his incompetent producer? And it's just a total random. Is that common? Yeah, it is common that, especially with politicians, it is. Some of them are totally as sweet off air as they are on. I've met a number of them. Senator Marsha Blackburn comes off on air exactly the way she does off air. If anything, she's a little bit nicer off air. She's a sweet, nice person. And pretty much almost all the Fox News people that I've met are almost exactly the same on air as they are off air. So, but for the most part, people are or have a tendency to hide some of their bad.
Joe Biden. I was going to say, it sounds a lot like Joe Biden, the kind of the backslapping politician in public, and then behind the scenes, kind of a ruthless,
That's what they claim. Now, is that true? I don't know. I just know that there is a lot of trends and patterns that I think one can point to with Semi Bird. Now, you might be asking, well, who cares? He's not even a candidate anymore. That is true. However, this is why I think this matters. Number one, as much as he says he's not interested in running the Republican Party, part of me wonders if he's going to pull a whole, oh, you know what, I never intended to run, but people have been begging me to. Someone needs to save because that's what I would do if I were him, given the amount of support he has with the delegates within the Washington State Republican Party. And I don't think he would be good for the state. I don't think he would be good for the party. Number two, he still has a whole bunch of supporters who claim loudly, they might still be a small number, but claim that they're not going to vote for Dave Reichert. They're going to get in the way. I'm not even going to take down the Semi-Bird signs. That's just childish. And maybe, just maybe, if they hear some of these stories and, believe them, maybe it will change the way, not how they look towards Semi. I don't care if they're huge Semi supporters and never stop. And like I said, I liked Semi until he got really, really mean-spirited, which I understand in response to my reporting. But I have nothing against Semi. And if he was the nominee, I would vote for him in this election. I would. He's been on the show more than Dave Reichert by a mile. But I want people to at least understand that they are throwing their loyalty and allegiance to someone who doesn't appear to be the guy he said.